Imagine you've kept your men alive through a man-eating giant, a witch, a monster with 6 heads, and even a trip down into the land of the dead. And then you lose all of them, every last man, in a single afternoon. And the thing that finally killed them wasn't any monster at all. It was hunger. It was the rule they couldn't keep, because there was an island they'd been warned about by name. 2 different prophets had told him the very same thing. You can sail past it, but you must never touch what grazes there. Leave it alone, and every man goes home. Harm it, and you all die. His men gave their word. They swore it. And then a storm trapped them on that shore. The food ran out, and the hunger set in. And a man dying of hunger will break any promise he ever made. This is the moment the cleverest man alive becomes the only man left alive, not because of a monster, but because of a promise his men could not keep. Let me tell you the story from the Odyssey. He had just lost 6 men to the monster in the strait, 6 of his best snatched off the deck, screaming his name. The crew that was left was grieving, and the next island they came to was the one place in all the world he had been warned to stay away from, twice. Down in the land of the dead, the blind prophet Tiresias had told him, and again, on her island, the witch Circe had told him the very same thing. There is an island called Trinachia, where the cattle of the sun graze, golden cattle and fat sheep that never breed, never grow old, and never die. The sacred herds of Helios, the sun itself, watched over by his own daughters, do not land there. And whatever happens, whatever it costs you, do not touch a single one of those animals. Let them be, and you may all still see home. Harm them, and your ship is destroyed. Your men are lost, and even you come home broken, years from now, alone. So Odysseus wanted to row straight past it. He told his men, "We do not stop here, not this island." But his men were finished. They had been awake for days. Night was coming on, the wind was turning ugly, and they were grieving friends they'd just watched die. And it was Eurylochus, the same man who had hung back from Circe's house, the one who always spoke the fear the others were feeling, who pushed back. Just one night, he begged, just to rest and cook a real meal and sleep on solid ground. We won't go near the cattle, you have our word. And Odysseus, against everything he had been told, gave in, but not before he made them swear. Every man on that ship swore a solemn oath, on the gods themselves. We will not lay a hand on the cattle or the sheep of the sun. We will only eat the food Circe gave us, nothing else. And then they landed. Now, you have to understand the seriousness of just what was going on. To a Greek, 2 things here were absolute. An oath sworn on the gods could not be broken. Break it, and you bring ruin down upon your own head. And the property of a god was untouchable. To lay your hands on what belongs to a god was the deepest insult a mortal could give. These men had just sworn the heaviest promise there is, standing right next to the most forbidden thing there is. All they had to do was nothing. And for a while, they did nothing. But then the storm came, and the storm did not leave. For a whole month, the wind blew the wrong way and wouldn't stop. Every morning they looked out at the sea, and the sea told them no. They couldn't sail. They were stuck on that island with the one thing they had sworn not to touch. And then their food ran out. The provisions Circe had given them were gone. So they did what starving men do. They fished with bent hooks, they snared seabirds, they scraped the shore for anything they could swallow. And slowly, day by day, they began to starve. I want you to really sit in with that, because this is the part that matters. These were not bad men. They were not greedy, they were not cruel. They were exhausted and grieving and literally starving to death. And every single day they had to walk past fat, healthy, golden cattle that they had sworn on their lives never to touch. Imagine being that hungry, looking at that much food every day for weeks. And then, at the worst possible moment, Odysseus left them. He went off alone, up into the island, to find a quiet place and pray to the gods for some way home. And the gods, maybe in mercy, maybe not, sent a deep, deep sleep over him. He was gone. He was asleep. And while he slept, the breaking point came. It was Eurylochus again who said it out loud. He gathered the starving men and he told them the thing a starving man cannot argue with. Listen, he said, every kind of death is hard, but the worst death of all, the slowest, cruelest one, is to starve. So let's not do that. Let's take the best of the sun's cattle. We'll sacrifice them properly to all the gods. And if the sun is angry that we killed his herd, when we get home, we'll build him a great temple full of treasures to make up for it. And the hunger made the decision for them. They took the cattle, but from the very first moment, something was wrong. They had no barley for the sacrifice the way the rite demanded. So they tore off oak leaves and used those instead, and plain water in place of wine. And then the signs began. The hides they had stripped off the cattle started to move, to crawl on their own along the ground. And the meat they had set on the spits over the fire, the meat began to make a sound. It lowed, it bellowed, cooked flesh and raw flesh alike, mooing on the spit as if the cattle were still alive and still crying out. Dead meat lowing on the fire like the animals were still alive, and the men so far gone with hunger that they ate it anyway for 6 straight days. If that just put a chill in you, you're exactly where you should be. Subscribe, because this is the moment everything he has survived finally comes due. Odysseus woke up and he came back down toward the shore, and the wind carried him the smell of roasting meat. And he knew. He stood there and cried out to the gods, but it was already done. 6 days of feasting, there was no taking it back, and the sun god had seen all of it. Helios was furious. He went straight to Zeus, the king of the gods, and demanded justice. Punish these men for what they did to my cattle. And if you don't, he said, I will take the sun down out of the sky and go shine it among the dead itself. Think about that threat. The whole living world left in permanent darkness and the sun shining only for the dead. And Zeus gave him his answer. Don't worry, I'll deal with them. I'll strike their ship with a thunderbolt and shatter it in the middle of the sea. Then, at last, the storm broke. The wind turned fair, and the men, relieved and well-fed for the first time in weeks, pushed the ship off the island and out into open water. They thought they had gotten away with it. They were barely out of sight of land when Zeus made good on his word. A black cloud rolled over the ship and turned the sea beneath it dark. The wind came screaming, and then a single thunderbolt came straight down out of the sky and struck the ship dead center. It blew it apart. Every man aboard was thrown into the churning sea, and every man who had eaten the cattle of the sun, which was all of them, drowned. The entire crew, every face that survived Troy, and the giant, and the witch, and the monsters, gone in a few minutes of dark water. All except one. Odysseus lived, for the simple reason that he was the only man who had never touched the cattle. He grabbed the broken keel of his ship, lashed the mast to it with a strip of leather, and climbed onto that little raft of wreckage. And the sea swept him away, alone. And I mean truly alone. For the first time in 20 years, there was no crew, no officers, no men at the oars, just one man on the bones of his own ship on an empty sea. Now let's stop and look at what actually destroyed them. It wasn't Cyclops, it wasn't Circe or Scylla or the sea god's storms. After everything they had survived, every monster, every god, every impossible thing, what finally killed his entire crew was hunger. The most ordinary thing in the world, an empty stomach, and a promise they couldn't keep. And the part that haunts you is that you understand them. They weren't monsters. They were starving men who were told to either die slowly or break one rule. They broke it, and it cost every single one of them their life. The one man who kept the rule is the only one left, and now he has to finish the rest of the long way home with no one beside him at all. He drifted on the broken spine of his own ship, the sea wide and silent in every direction. And for the first time since he sailed off to the war, all those years ago, there was no one left to answer when he called. If you know someone staring down a temptation that could cost them everything, share this video with them. Sometimes a story says it better than any advice ever could. And if you hate it when a great story ends, there's a whole second Odyssey waiting for members. The chapters that never made the main channel, the deep cuts I tell for the people who are really into this stuff. When you join, you keep them alive. So thank you for that, truly. Right now on your screen is the whole saga, every story in one place. One of my favorites comes next, a goddess who offered this man the one thing no mortal is ever offered: to never grow old and never die. And the answer he gave her: start at the beginning or just keep going. Click it right now, and I'll see you in the next story.